Welcome everybody to Repairing Your Credit. This session, my name is Alan Montague and I do webinars for the Northern California SBDC network right now. Because I'm the webinar guy, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about how to interact with us. Many people, this may be your first use of a Zoom webinar, although I believe pretty much everyone in the world is using Zoom right now. But let's talk about some of the features we've got or ways you can interact with us on this webinar, which may be a little different from a meeting platform you've used before. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see these three buttons. The one in the middle is that raised hand. That's a great way of contacting us. So if during the session you need any form of technical support, if you click that, it will show your hand as raised, and I will reach it back out to you when I can and find out what sort of help you need. In fact, let's everyone try that. Everyone click on that raise hand button just to make sure we can. I should be seeing a whole bunch of raised hands coming in. Fantastic. You've all done this before, clearly. Great. Okay, and then when you click it again, once you click it, it turns from raised hand to lower hand, and when you click it again, which you can do now, it's going to go away. And if you don't make it go away, we can. So that's the raise and lower hand. We might occasionally throw in a request where I'd say like, raise your hand, everybody who's from Reading, or something like that. And we'll ask you to do that if Joe tries to do that. If you have questions for us, we're going to be handling those through the Q&A space here. So if you click on that, it opens a dialog box where you can put in a question. So every so often, as we close off each topic, we'll pause and check for questions, and we'll do that at the end as well. And I'll be curating those. So if you have your questions, please put them in the Q&A space. That will enable us to curate them and make sure we get answers to everybody as well. One of the things I may do, if it's a simple question that I can give you a response to that would only apply to you, I may reply directly to you in the Q&A space. But if it's something that's a great question, which most of them tend to be, ones we want to share with everybody else, we'll tend to answer those as part of the session. And then to the left of that is a chat. The chat we'd like you to use if we ask you to respond to us, there's chat. Or if you need to contact me for anything technical, raise your hand, put something in the chat. That's the way to get hold of me. If you're having problems with your, so when you're doing that, good point. That opens a little box there. If you're responding to us and want to respond to everybody, then you can select all panelists and attendees, which is a way of getting the message to us all. If it's just something you want to send me, maybe for technical support or something, please click on just all panelists. And then there's some audio settings. So the left-hand corner, you've got that audio settings options there. Depending on what your system's got, you'll see various things on there, maybe a microphone, maybe speakers. You can always test your own speaker if you're having problems. And it will play a ringtone at you. Also test your microphone if you need it. And when those are good, they're good. You can get to all your audio settings by clicking on the audio settings button. And finally, if you're having a problem, there's this switch to phone audio that will allow you to, brings up the phone number for you to call, and a meeting ID and a participant ID. If you can put in your participant ID, that really is useful because it helps us identify who is in the meeting and be able to communicate back with you. Okay, so I'm going to introduce to you Joe, my colleague over in Reading. Joe is the perfect person for doing this webinar. He's got over 45 years experience in the financial services and credit counseling world, which you wouldn't believe it from that baby face that Joe has there. He's been doing everything within the SBDC. He's been assisting everything from startups and counseling existing business, primarily focusing on the finance and loan readiness side. He's been teaching all sorts of financial services classes for 20 years. I've seen him teach other classes as well. Prior to working with us, he was 24 years experience as a bank manager, lender. You wouldn't have thought it, again, so young looking, and 12 years as a certified credit and housing counselor. For the last several years, like 5 or so, he's been assisting small businesses both at SCED and with the California SBDC. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Joe, it's time for you to start sharing. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you look at all those numbers there, and you must realize I am an old guy. That's what we call old guy. Good news about old guy is you got a lot of experience. So that's I guess, a good thing. Especially since I've been in credit since I was a kid and had lots of hair. So, that has changed too over the years. So by the end of the course, again, we're going to talk about
Joe,
understanding
you're not
credit
sharing.
scores.
Joe, you haven't shared yet. We need you to
Do I
share.
have to reshare again?
Yeah. So share that
Okay.
screen you've got.
Let's go back.
And there we go. That's great.
Is that where we want to be?
That's exactly where we need to be.
So we want to go, let's see, I want to go here. There we go. So I can, now is it changing screen? It is, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
All right. So again, by the end of the course, we're going to obtain understanding credit scores, credit scoring itself, how to obtain credit reports to take a look at it. And for us that are on the line that are advisors, how we can go through those reports with the client, how to connect with us, and how to start repairing your credit, because that's obviously an important piece of this entire class, is having the ability to repair. Credit reports are one of the things that most of us don't really look at probably often enough. With this day and age of identity theft, social media, and the capability of things being stolen you don't want stolen, it's become a more important piece of what we want to see on an ongoing basis. So by the end of the day, you'll be able to know how to see these various things in your credit file and keep track of what's going on. So do we have, Alan, a slide for this as far as that?
You know what? I think because we got so many people in here, I think we can probably skip this one.
Okay, sounds good. So then we'll go right directly into the credit scoring situation. Understanding credit score. Credit scoring was developed, believe it or not, I checked my history a few days ago to make sure. It was actually started in 1950s. However, in the 1950s, most banks, financial institutions of all kinds were still using paper documents. Everything was being pulled on paper. So technically the credit scoring usage didn't really develop till the mid 70s. Well, once computers ended up on the majority of the bankers' desks as we went into the computer age and had small screens with adaptable computers that we could actually use on an ongoing basis. But credit scores have been around a long time. Credit scores are developed from the credit report. You can't have one without the other. So the credit score monetizes what you've done in the past. How do you get your credit score? There are many ways. One, of course, would be if you have a credit card company, many of them will offer a free service where you can get a score from the actual credit card company itself. If you have a credit protection company, like I'll just bring up one that I know of, Legal Shield. So you have Legal Shield that's protecting you against identity theft. They may offer free credit scores. For the majority of us that don't have those opportunities, the best way to pull a credit score is through creditkarma.com. So Credit Karma, one word, K-A-R-M-A, and that'll offer you guys, all of us, a free credit score. It's supposedly an average credit score, but like many websites, Zillow and other things where you can check your house's value, it's not an appraisal. Credit Karma is not an official score either, but it sure as heck gives you a nice ballpark figure. And so what I have done personally, for me, for instance, is I put it on a quarterly check. So I get an email every quarter from Credit Karma saying, hey, Joe, time to check your score. It'll either say, congratulations, your score went up, please check, or it may say, your credit score has changed in a fashion, please check. And that way I can keep tabs on the score on an ongoing basis. Credit Karma does not create any havoc to your score, doesn't mess your score up in any way, shape, or form. And it does, again, at least give you ballpark figures as to where that score is going. How is the credit score set? This graph, and by the way, you'll be getting the ability to get this slide deck later on after this is over, obviously. But here's how the credit score basically is set. 35% of the score created by the history. So what have you done in the past? Have you made your payments on time? Have you, basically I like to call it, kept your nose clean. Payment history itself and making payments on time, hugely important. The fact that you have no collections and late pays, definitely a main portion of this. How much you owe, 30%. So a lot of it has to do with how much you owe on your credit cards, okay? You want to keep your credit cards below 50% at all times of the limit. So the lower you are to the limit of your card, the better your score will be. 10% new credit. How often do you get new credit? A lot of people are persuaded many times by the 0% interest for a year, and they'll do what I call card swapping. Sometimes that's not a positive thing to card swap. So be careful on taking advantage of card swapping. 15% length of credit history. So if you have, prime example, it's more difficult for a 20-year-old to have a great credit score than it is to have a 60-year-old. Because, you know, theoretically, the 60-year-old probably has a longer credit history for a longer time period. So just an example. And then 10% types of credit. So if you have had to deal with places like check cashing facilities, places with really high interest rate, loan situations, that can have an effect on the score as well. Be good if I went the right way. So what's a good credit score? And this gives you a nice example. I'm a golfer. So one of the things I do in my spare time, so I put it in golfing terms for us. The credit score starts at 300, and the top end is 850. By the way, I've never seen an 850, so and I've never hit it. I've been close to 800 a couple times. Not an easy number to hit, and I've never seen a 300. So there's the good news that you know they're not easy to hit those numbers. So 300 to 629, I call it the subpar range. This is in various degrees, obviously. Much better to have a 629 than a 300, you know, in comparison. But difficult to borrow money in that range. 630 to 689, I call that the par. So there's the nice middle of the road scenario. You could probably borrow money, but you're going to pay more for it. Above par, 690 to 719. So that means you're going to have the capability to borrow easier. You're going to get probably a lower rate than people at par or subpar, and you know, lower fees potentially because you're a lower risk. The higher the score, the lower you are risk-wise to a lender. And then there's the birdie range, 720 to 850. If you're in the 800s, I probably should have put an eagle range in there for a really good score, but suffice it to say anything above 720 puts you in a highly lendable position. You have no late pays, you have a long credit history, you have no collections or negative items, and your balances to credit cards are probably 40% or less to the limit. So that would be how you get those higher scores. So credit score, we gave you the free sources. Don't pay for it, please. If you go to the websites of the three agencies, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, you can go to the sites. They can give you these numbers, but they'll probably charge you a fee. Credit Karma is totally free. And we covered score factors and bad and good scores. So I think we're ready for knowledge check.
Yeah. Quick knowledge check. So we're going to launch a poll, everybody. So I'm going to launch this poll. You won't be able to see it, Joe, but everybody else will be. And it's a couple of questions about what impacts your credit score and what a 685 would be considered as. So please take a moment to select those two. I'm seeing some people starting to vote. So we're going seeing a whole bunch of votes coming in. So I'll give people a moment or two to do that. Joe, while people are voting on this poll, somebody put in a question, and I think they're right on this. They said, I believe Credit Karma is a lead generation company. Yes. I thought it was a site, annualcreditreport.com, which is the one that allows you a soft poll, and it's the free one. That's the official site, not Credit Karma. That's correct, isn't it? But there's a difference between score and report. Yeah.
That is correct. Those are the two sites of importance to use. Annualcreditreport.com does not historically give you a credit score.
We're going into that in just a second, won't we, Joe?
And we'll be going into that in a second. And Credit Karma does, but Credit Karma doesn't give you the breakdown list of what's on your report either. So you have to kind of use, I use both. Yeah, Credit Karma does give you obviously the ability, it'll suggest things for you. So yes, it does that. But I use it just to check the score, where the score number is going.
Okay, so I'm going to give people a few more seconds to vote. We've had just under half the people have actually voted. So you have, after selecting those two answers, you do have to hit the submit button at the bottom. So let me just do that to just test that on here. Okay, so another couple of seconds for people to finish polling, and then I will close off the poll in 3, 2, 1, close. All right, now it's time for me, hopefully, come on, let me do it, to share the results with everybody.
Oh, well done.
Okay, so most people, 70% of people said that was payment history that was the biggest impact. And if I remember rightly, that was 35% of the impact for credit score came from there.
That's right.
Credit score of 685. 2/3 of folks correctly said it was a fair score.
Right.
People said, and it was just shy of being par. That's I believe that would be well, just a missed putt, should we say?
There you go. Yeah, it was by an inch.
Yeah, by an inch, yes.
Exactly.
All right. I had one or couple of people say they couldn't see the poll. We often find, if you, depending on how you've grabbed the poll, so if you've how you opened your Zoom, if you're viewing it in a browser, completely in a browser, some people you find that the browser pop-up things stop polls from coming, and it might be worth checking on that. But mostly it comes in separately. All right, so that was go to the next slide. That was answered live. Any other questions around credit scores that stay on there? No. Okay, let's talk about credit reports, Joe.
Very good. We'll move on to the credit report itself. And this technically is what I used back in the early 70s to make decisions on giving credit to people back in the day when you would sit down at my desk, we would talk about what you wanted, and I would say, okay, I will look into it for you. You fill out the application form, and I would pull the credit history. Back in the 70s, TRW was the only name of the game at that time. And TRW was what we used to say, we'll pull your TRW. We didn't say pull your credit report. We got into that naming game there. So now there are three: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Experian or Equifax, depends how you want to pronounce it. Experian is the old TRW. Experian bought them out years and years back. So there are three agencies now nationally used. And so how do you pull those reports? And here is that person's question a little bit ago. This is the website that was set up specifically at the request of the federal government to allow, at the bequest of all the agencies, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, to set up a place for us to be able to go to see what's on our reports. So it's www.annualcreditreport.com, all run together, no space, all lowercase. And it allows you then to pull 1, 2, or 3 of those agency reports. You can pull them up on your computer. You can print them. and you can save them to look at. And this will give you the list of each creditor that is reporting to each report. And people say, well, wait a minute, Joe, how come wouldn't they all be the same? And the answer to that is normally no, because not all creditors and credit card companies report to Equifax, not all report to TransUnion, and every once in a while they'll even miss reporting to Experian. I like to put it that the Experian report really is the one that I like the most, because normally it has the most items listed from all the various entities: house, mortgage loans, auto loans, credit cards, personal loan companies, etc. Equifax technically was created originally, in my opinion, by the automobile industry for auto loan postings, and TransUnion was invented really for the real estate area. So, but again, and that's why people have scores that are different. You could be 20, 30 point difference between Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So many times on many types of loans, including mortgages, they'll pull all three and give you a blended score, they call it. So here's one of the pages. You would request your free credit report, bottom left corner in red. And it would take you then to this particular page where you can, pull the reports. If we're doing a review, if I'm doing a review for you and you want a full review, I'll ask you for all three reports, okay? So save them all to your desktop, and then you can send them to your SBDC consultant for review. And there's the button to press, request your reports. And again, that will take you to the actual page. You will need to give them this information. So you have to be kind of ready to put your social security number on this page. This is a protected site. This is a no sale. There's no sales on this site. It's not being, your name's not being sold. Your address, previous address if you haven't been there for 2 years. Select your report types. It'll give you a little box to mark for each of the three. And then they'll ask you some questions like, did you ever have a mortgage with, Wells Fargo? And they'll give you 4 different banks, to make sure it is you besides your social security number. And then you press the final button. Again, it's personal confidential, and it starts to give you again the list. And the list is what I care about, because the list really tells your history, right? So if you have I'm going to go back in time here. If you had a Mervyn's account, a Kmart account, a Montgomery Ward's account, well, see how old I am? Sears, Macy's, all those individual companies that you have cards and accounts with will be listed individually on this list, okay? And there's the print and save as PDF button. And that basically is what the pages look like with the data on them, okay? Obviously we've redacted that, but you get the idea. In this particular case, it tells you as a client, you have 23 accounts and you've had 5 inquiries in the last 12 months, normally is the time period they use. So, and then of course, individual listed items at the bottom with their addresses. What's cool about the reports, especially Experian, in my opinion, is it gives you the name and address of each of these creditors if you need to get a hold of them, and a phone number. And these are updated continually by these companies. And so you can contact, if there's an issue, you can contact the company directly and easily through printing this report. So again, getting your credit report, annualcreditreport.com. You can get all 3, save them as PDFs. In a normal year, when we're not going through these issues of disaster declarations throughout the United States, we would normally suggest you pull these on rotation. maybe pull your Experian report in January, your Equifax in June, and your TransUnion in November. That way you're continually rotating through the credit reports. Since you can only get them once a year per report, you can then pull them on an ongoing basis. Time for a new little question and answer there.
It's time for our second poll. So for anyone who can't see the poll, I'm going to briefly read it out. So the first question is, when was the last time you obtained a copy of your own credit report? And the choices there are like within the last few days or last few weeks or sometime earlier this year, last year, before last year, or you've never done it. And the second question there is how often you get your Experience credit report free from annualcreditreport.com. Even actually, to be perfectly honest, if I look at that really closely now, the answer is never, because I've misspelled the words annualcreditreport.com on the quiz. So there's two F's on there. So I apologize for that misspelling, folks. But the
good catch,
the choices there are you can get it once a day, once a month, once every 4 months, or once a year. And we'll give people another few seconds to select both of those. And if you didn't see the poll, just throw your answer in the chat. So how often can you get your credit report, and when was the last time you did? So I'm going to give people a few more seconds, and then we'll close off that poll. All right, there, I'm closing it off now. Okay, I'm going to share the results with everybody. So hopefully you can all see that. So most people, that's an interesting split there. You see, Joe?
Yeah, wow.
So that means for probably virtually everybody on there, you should be able to pull your Experian report fresh and clean today.
True.
And if not, a whole bunch of people have pulled it within the last few days or weeks anyway, so that's great as well.
Right.
In terms of questions that are sitting out outstanding, so a couple of questions around credit reports. So Kelly asked whether you used to be able to receive a credit report at no cost each year from each of the 3 reporters, and I guess that's what we just talked about. So I would say that one's been answered. I would say I think the other things are coming about what's on there and how long they'll be more suitable for the next section. So why don't we move on to the next section, Jay?
All right. So obviously, we are here to help. We are here to assist. The Small Business Development Center has consultants in all areas of the United States, much less California. And yes, we are busy currently with the COVID-19 loan situation, disaster loans, the new PPP loans that are coming out by the end of this week. But we're here to assist in all areas, including credit report. So one of the things about the SBA financing is credit still has to be a little decent in there. So let's talk and let's try to get you your credit increased. Let's get the score up. Let's get some of the things off that we can help you get off the report so that you can easily obtain some of these funding capabilities. And here's how you can find us in various areas. You have a location finder website at the top. And we have a finance center in the greater Sacramento area. That's our group of financingsimplified.com. We can help as well. Takes about 10-15 minutes for a quick intake to get on our tracking situation. We are paid for through the SBA and the state of California and local entities that donate. I like to call us at least a quasi nonprofit. We don't charge for any of our, for the majority, if not any of our assistance we offer. And so, hey, free shot, free help. I wished I had it when I started my little side business, I'll guarantee you. So again, once your advisor has been assigned, like when I do a report, I will ask for you to submit the reports to me by email. We'll agree to a time slot. We will get together and we'll go over the report. In my particular case, I think most of us are going to do a written explanation to you of what we see are the best things you can do to improve your score. And again, that's the ways. So then you had a question, I think, Alan, as to who online was already a client of ours, huh?
Yeah, let's say.
And who is it?
So if you're find out who might be already connected with us. I'm seeing lots of people coming in. We're seeing about a third of people are already clients or so of ours. So
very good.
Coming in. Give it again a few more seconds. It should be quicker. There should be there's a lot less to think about on this poll, so I'll not leave it for so long.
Very good.
And okay, good. Close off the poll in 3, 2, 1. And let's share those results with everybody. So just under a third are currently clients, in which case connect back with us. And if not,
we'd love to have you. We'd love to help.
And the best thing about it is you've already paid for your taxes for this help. That's the best thing about the SBA, SBDC. Exactly. You've already paid your state and local tax, state and federal taxes. All right.
All right. So now to go over some quick fixes here on the next screen. What impacts the score? We've kind of already chatted about this, length of time, that you've had, credit, using cards, so forth, negative items. Late payments are very difficult to get rid of per se if they were really late. The good news is that most companies do not report a late payment until you actually are 30 days behind on your payment. So in other words, if your payment was due, say today, March 31, they will not report to the credit bureaus until April 30th. So, you have a lot of lead time technically before they actually, report this. If you pay the payment Friday of this week, you might have a late pay, maybe a fee, but it won't report as a late pay on the credit. So don't give up on that. Collections obviously are a negative. One of the ones we'll talk about shortly here, a forgotten doctor bill. Some of those are easy to correct. Obviously foreclosures, repossessions, and bankruptcies, more difficult. Time is the best healer on those larger negative items. Let's talk about the medical bills first. As I mentioned in the last slide, doctor bills are notorious for getting A, missed, B, lost in the mail, C, never got them. My wife used to work in a medical billing in one of her first careers, and she can tell you it's not a fun thing. It's not easy. So doctors, for the most part, will give you a break, I'd say at least 70–75% of the time. If you're willing to go in immediately, ask for their help, pay the bill, the $25 or $20, $30, $40 bill that you owe the doctor for off, and ask them if they would be so kind to remove it because of whatever the reason. I had a situation where I moved from one city to a new city, and the doctor bill was never forwarded. So I ended up with a late on my and a collection on my credit score. Well, immediately when I got it, I told them the situation. They removed the late, and I paid it off, and boom, 30 days, everything went back to the way it was. It is not immediate. So remember, this is not immediate fix. If you paid the thing today, it won't reflect tomorrow, okay? It normally takes a 30-day cycle for the credit bureaus to get the information and update their files. So there is about a 30-day lag. So late car payment. We had a situation where a customer talked to me the other day about the fact that they went from a manual check pay to an automatic deduction from their bank account, right? And 1 month missed, the company or dealer, say was, I don't know, say it was Ford Motor Credit. Ford Motor decided to, okay, we'll make your next payment automatic. It skipped that month, went to the next. Everything was, the customer thought everything was fine, and missed the payment. So you had a 30-day late, right? 5 or 6 months after you buy the car, that's not a good thing. So the client called and said what happened, told them what was the deal, paid the payment, got it caught up, and the company removed it from the report. During this disaster, don't forget that you can contact the majority of your creditors and ask for, I've been telling them, tell them COVID relief, coronavirus relief. This is a hardship scenario for the most of us. So do not forget to ask for help. If you've been laid off, if you've been fired, if you're a sole owner and you've got no money coming in, call all of them, okay? Call your Visa, call your MasterCard, call your car company. Right now, the mortgage companies, the majority of mortgage companies and banks are allowing you to skip house payments. So ask them for help, okay? You'll eventually owe that debt. What they'll do is advance the payment 1 more month. That's all they're doing. The company's not losing any money, but you're gaining cash flow. And that's what we need right now is cash flow. And again, the unbalanced card idea. If you can help it, do not owe up to the limit on a card. If you have a $5,000 limit card, don't owe $4,999 if you can possibly help it, all right? Again, difficult in disaster times, but if you have a card sitting with 0 balance owed, that's a Visa, and you owe MasterCard $5,000 on a $5,000 limit, split them up. Split them up. Put $2,500 on most companies will allow transfers. Some of them 0% on transfers. Transfer $2,500 to one card, the other card drops to $2,500. You still owe the same amount, but your score will increase because you're not maxed out on the card. And the other one again is too many cards sitting there with nothing on them. Okay, I call them deadwood cards, right? Deadwood. I've always suggested as part of my time with Consumer Credit Counseling Service, when we help people get out of debt, I like to say I spent 24 years helping people get into debt, and the next 13 helping them get out. That was my penance years at Consumer Credit Counseling. We always suggested that you keep your Visa, MasterCard, and if you can possibly do it, get rid of store cards that are individually used, okay? Mervyn's used to be used at Mervyn's. Sears used to be used as Sears. Kohl's at Kohl's. You get the idea, right? Those are store cards. They're historically usable only at the store, and they're historically 22 to 28% interest rates.
Yeah, I'd like to remind folks, please, I'm seeing a couple of people throw questions into the chat. It's really hard for us to keep an eye on those. So please put your questions into the Q&A rather than the chat. That way we can curate them better.
Thank you. And again, you can check addresses, you can check employers. That normally will come into play if you have, unfortunately, identity theft. So they're not really hugely important, but it will give you a list of addresses of where you've lived and employers for the last 10 years on these reports. And the harder to fix items, obviously, are IRS and child support, unpaid. Those will show. Unpaid, the other one that's showing up quite often recently is student loans, unpaid student loans. The good news during, if there could be some good news during COVID, student loans from the federal government, student loans, they're allowing deferrals. You have to apply. IRS is being more lenient. Don't forget that the IRS offers payment plans. You do not have to be stuck out there. They will allow you to pay payments each month based on your cash flow. They may be more lenient during COVID. So, but again, these things take a little longer. And if you're applying for a disaster loan through SBA, you must be on a pay plan with the IRS. You must have some kind of documentation on your government-backed student loans that you're making efforts to pay, because if you're behind on government owed debt, very difficult to get disaster loan funding from the SBA. Understandable. Uh-oh.
That's the same slide, sorry.
It's all right. So identify quick fixes, pay off old bills, rebalance cards that are at limit, fix errors if possible.
I don't think we have a knowledge check on this one, so let's
We're getting close to
start diving into some of those questions that have been
questions. Yep.
a whole bunch of questions related to this. So, how long does it take for things to come off the credit report? For an example, a short sale, is it possible to get it off any quicker than standard way?
You can always request, especially during this disaster time, that be done. But normally for the larger items like short sales, bankruptcies, bankruptcy you can't do anything about. It becomes less relevant after 7 years on a bankruptcy. It starts becoming irrelevant actually after 2 years. That's another story. But it becomes really irrelevant after 7 and falls off in 10. That's historically.
I was asking about, we suggested people get the doctor to remove the late payment. How would you do that?
We requested directly from the collection agency and or the doctor. I start with the doctor first because they can then communicate with their collecting group to have it removed. If not, sometimes the collection agency. We have a local collection agency, for instance, in Shasta County. And I've had people go in trying to start businesses in the past and said, why don't you go in, tell them you're really sorry, be very contrite, pay the bill and ask them to remove it. And sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not, but it's sure worth a try. You know what I mean? Because a credit score on a removed collection, by the way, one collection, $20 doctor bill that's in collection, you have it removed from the report and you have other positive stuff there, can have a 25-point effect in 30 days. It's huge.
So
it's huge.
A couple of things about mortgage relief. So someone's really sharing that they've heard that banks and mortgage companies are deferring payment for 90 days, but they're saying at the end of that time, the entire amount of the deferral will be due. So it's not like they're pushing it out to the end of the mortgage. So that's something worth noting that will.
And that's one of the things you want to ask. That's exactly right. Is the question when you do this deferral is, are they tacking it on to the end of the loan? In other words, extending your loan term, or are they going to want it all back in 90 days? That's a very valuable question to ask whoever it is you're dealing with.
In terms of the, there's a couple of questions about things you can defer. Someone's asking whether we've heard any deferrals of health insurance payments. I've not heard of anything like that.
No, I haven't yet. No, you could always ask at this time. Yeah, it's worth the call. It really is. This is unprecedented. Obviously, this staying home is driving my wife and I nuts. Anyway, I'm sure all of us are feeling that way.
My wife and I are both still right now lucky enough to be working, and I'm working upstairs in the home office. She's working downstairs at the kitchen table.
Exactly. You have to formulate a space.
Exactly.
But anything is fair. Anything's fair game. Yeah, always ask.
So somebody was asking about calling and canceling old cards. I think that's there's a balance there, isn't there, Joe? You want to still make sure you've got a decent number of cards to show you've got a lot as much unused credit as where should you be aiming in terms of your credit?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I was lucky enough to actually have one of the people from FICO, FICO, the credit scoring agency, come to one of our meetings not too very long ago. and when I was at Consumer Credit. And they talked about the fact that you need 4 pieces of positive reportable credit. So at least have 4, okay? So what that would mean is if you had a house payment, that's 1, car payment, that's 2. So you need what? 2 other facilities, 2 other credit cards, right? So the whole idea was, and my wife and I did this some 20 years ago, when we had, believe it or not, 20 credit cards between the 2 of us. Yeah, sometimes we work better helping others than helping ourselves. 20 credit cards between the 2 of us. That includes gas cards, store cards, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. So we sat down and we whittled them down, right? First, we cut off all the little store cards. I got rid of eventually all the gas cards. Those gasoline cards, Chevron, Shell, you know, I'm not slamming their gasoline, but hey, let's face it, they're more expensive than if you go to, you know, we have a gas station in our Safeway parking lot, right? So, you know, you can go AM, PM. So anyway, so gas cards, and you whittle it down to 4 reportable items, and then keep them in good shape. Everything else is not necessary to have an 800 credit score.
The other side about having the cards below 50%. So if you've got maybe 3 or 4, you've got 7 or 8 of these unused cards, and a couple of them may be general use ones that you just like. We have one that we used to use when we traveled because it gave us it didn't cost us for foreign transaction fees. Now our main card does that. We have this one still sitting around, but it's got a nice little credit limit on it, and I don't want to close it down because it allowed me to do that sharing if I ever need to do that. So it's
exactly
those pieces.
Exactly.
I think you said, did you say 40% at one? 40% on your credit cards if you can average that?
Yeah, 40 to 45% is you know, don't run it ever above half limit. Half limit is the catch. Anything above half the limit, the 5,000 limit, 2,500, once it goes above that, your score will slowly, you'll see it, you can watch it on Credit Karma, it'll slowly drop.
And then how quickly, when you've got your cards under that 50%, do the changes reflect? Someone wanted to know.
Yeah, again, it's about 30 days. You have to give it about 30 days.
Yeah, I think it also depends on what day of the month they do that check.
Correct.
I discovered that we have the card which we use everything for, and so that runs up and down we pay it off entirely. But towards the end of the month, before we paid off the payment date, it gets quite high, and we discovered that was the day when they were doing the credit check. Actually, we changed our payment date to a couple of days before the end of the month, and suddenly our credit report just my score went up by about 4 or 5 points because it was same money, but it was changing place, and it was happening at a different time.
You know, and that, Alan, that's a great thing to bring up at this time too, and that is if your credit due dates are off, especially if now you're getting income at various times of the month, you can ask for a date change. Exactly what Alan said. You can go to the company and say, I don't get paid on the 15th anymore. I get paid on the 12th, or I get paid on the 18th, right? So your money doesn't come in for 3 extra days. You can ask for a date change. Normally, it depends on how many days you're going to ask them to move that date, but many times they'll do it for free.
Question about student loans. A couple of questions around student loans, but I think the important thing there was you're saying if they're in default, you've got a problem.
Exactly.
If you can try and negotiate and manage, somebody was saying their loans are in default, and they can't pay what's being asked at a minimum. They want to negotiate. The company wants to negotiate. Try negotiating at this point.
Exactly. Try to negotiate, especially now that we're all in this situation. There's going to be, it depends. If you've been in default for a year at this point, and they're trying to collect, it'll be tougher. But if it's say it's January, you went into default January of 20, and now COVID hit, Yeah, there's going to be a little more leniency to give you a break under those circumstances. Okay, it's worth a call.
Yeah. So what else is there to say? So we've got about 9 minutes left. I want to make sure we're respecting this time. So someone was saying that they're using one of the services, they use like a TransUnion service to do a regular check, and they're paying $20 a month for that. You know, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's your? Should they stop paying?
A lot of people, of course, do that if indeed they're offering you some sort of identity theft tracking along with the ability to see the report. I know that I happen to have a company that I use for identity theft assistance, and I'm paying about $18 a month. So, you know, if they're offering identity theft as part of this package, then it's great. If they're just giving you the ability to see your credit report, it's not worth the money.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
The question around, so if someone used the Keep Your Home California program during the last recession to get help paying the mortgage for about 1 to 2 years, would that have impacted their credit standing?
It shouldn't have affected credit standing. And I understand that they're also from what I've heard, they're included in this potential, assistance program for future house payments.
Just a point of note for somebody's posted, thank you. They called United Healthcare yesterday and were told they're working on a solution, potentially deferring payments for 30 days. So that's what one of the attendees has shared with us. So thank you very much for doing that.
Great news.
That's a question for all of us. So I've just done that one. Okay. So, yeah. How can you help lower your credit from not having all those loans? So if you've got if you just don't have a bunch of loans, will you still be able to get assistance if you, as a result of having a low credit score through not having lots of credit?
Well, you know, and I've always said, being in the business as long as I have, I always said that no credit is better than bad credit. It has, unfortunately, the same effect on your credit score, and will probably have to be explained. But in this day and age where everything is automated, okay, I always suggest to think about at least having, something. Have a card. A lot of online companies that come to mind, one that advertises dramatically on television almost every day, using some very large stars to advertise their particular product, and they're darn good at it. Okay, they survived the 2008, 2009 last big real estate bomb that hit us. Back in those days, they survived that. When during that time period, a lot of credit cards companies failed because people stopped making those payments first. Obviously, credit card companies are the first to go. So on payments, when you have a situation like a downturn in the economy. But yeah, get an online Visa, or go to your bank. If you're a banker, if you bank up here in the Reading area, our credit unions have fantastic credit card rates. And when I talk about fantastic, I'm talking below 15%. So if you have credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, that is below 15% on the APR, you're doing great. All right? Because these are unsecured debts.
We've got a whole bunch of questions I want to get. Is there someone talk about, can you talk about business credit reports and how to get it? Is there such a thing as a business credit report?
There is, and I have never, believe it or not, gone directly to a business credit report before. So I've always used personal credit reports.
Okay. So the couple of things. Somebody actually wanted us to take a moment to talk about some of the scams that are out there and warn people about them.
Oh, good idea.
We've heard of SBA people pretending to be from the SBA and stuff like that, doing reaching out and yeah, be really careful with everything.
Yeah, watch your phone calls, especially phone calls and emails. Be skeptical of anything that sounds too good, because it probably is.
Like I said at the beginning, if you're looking to get an SBA loan or any or information, you go to sba.gov. At the top of their any web page there they've got now is a yellow banner, which will give you help and a really clear process of how to get information and help from them, and also through your SBDC. But be careful about who else you go to.
Yeah, there are actually companies that I have seen on the internet through a search engine that are charging a fee to help you with the application process for the disaster loan.
Yeah.
You give us $500, we'll help you through it. Well, guess what? SBDC will do it for nothing.
Yeah,
okay? So that's what we're here for. That's what we were invented for, these types of situations.
So one of the last questions we have time for. So how does a company negotiate with credit card companies or line of credit creditors on partial late payments or payment schedule on a non-dig on your credit reporting? The banks seem to either have a minimum payment made or a negative reporting to a credit bureau, nothing in between. What's your suggestions, Joe?
Again, during this unusual, if you asked me this 2 weeks ago, or what, 15 days ago, 18 days ago, it would have been different. I would have agreed with you 100%. They wouldn't have given you the time of day to do that kind of thing. Okay. But now is a different ball game. This is a completely different situation. Our businesses have lost income dramatically. A lot of people have been laid off or sent home because of closures. It's a whole new animal. So, always request if indeed you're having cash flow issues. We do have 2 new loan programs that have started up as of technically last Friday when the president signed the CARE Act. So contact your local SBDC, your local Women's Business Center, and talk to us about what these new programs are. We have the new and improved disaster loan program, and we have the new, it's called the PPP program, which is going to help pay for keeping your employees paid. Wow, that's a completely new animal. So call us, we'll help you through it.
And we're hoping to, after when this webinar finishes, I will be working to finalize the details. We plan to have a webinar all about those, probably with some folks from the SBA on it as well, probably on Friday. So wherever you heard about this, keep your eyes on that place, and we'll get registration information out quickly. So once again, it's a good idea to talk to everybody, credit card companies, banks, etc. I see it's really 11 o'clock, and I think we've covered most of these things. I've got a couple. There's still like 15 open questions. Most of those are kind of returning. A lot of those are kind of relating to the various loan programs that are available.
Right.
Cover all of those. SBA.gov has got a great piece on there. In fact, let me think I might be able to put it in chat right now. Is that the right one? No, that's not the right one. I'm going to find that very quickly and throw it in chat. I've the latest thing from the SBA. It's a great page with a lot of fantastic information on it. Where's my page? So I've got so many things on my screen right now. It's really hard to find them, but it's this page here. So if you're a small business, I'll just put it in the chat. So click on that link, get some great information about what they can do, including the PPP, the advances, and all those things straight from the SBA. That was updated last night. Okay, we'll try and take a look at the questions. Any questions that are related more to credit stuff, I will bounce at Joe. We'll try and get a set of answers out to you probably by the end of tomorrow. we'll be posting a recording of today. So I'm just going to stop the recording now. We don't need this to be on the recording.